What's up, MCC? Thanks so much for joining us for chapel today. We are so excited to worship with you. Pray that this service would minister to you and meet you right where you are, and that you would just be able to come before Jesus and ready to praise him.
It's your heart we're searching for. We want you and nothing more. Let your glory fill this place. We're alive in your presence. It's your heart we're searching for. We want you and nothing more. Let your glory fill this place. We're alive in your presence. We surrender all to you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you move. Do what you want to, do what you want to. Are open wide. Let us see more than before. But come have your way here. We surrender all to you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. All-consuming fire fall on us. 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 We surrender all to you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you move. Do what you want to, do what you want to. We surrender all to you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you move. Do what you want to, do what you want to. All-consuming fire fall on us. All-consuming fire fall on us. We surrender all to you. Do what you want to, do what you want to. God, we love to see you move. Do what you want to, do what you want to. planets are in motion and galaxies are bright. We are amazed in the light of the stars. It's all proclaiming who you are. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see you there hanging on a tree. You bled and then you died and then you rose again for me. And now you're sitting on your heavenly throne. Soon we will be coming home. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see your face. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see your face. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. All that you are is beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. I see your face. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. When we arrive at eternity's shore, where death is just a memory and tears are no more, we'll enter in as the wedding bells ring. Your bride will come together and we'll sing. You're beautiful.
Exodus 35, 30 through 35. Then Moses said to the people of Israel, "See, the Lord has called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And he has filled him with the Spirit of God, with skill, with intelligence, with knowledge, and with all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold and silver and bronze, and cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood for work in every skilled craft. And he has inspired him to teach, both him and Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. He's filled them with skill to do every sort of work done by an engraver, or by a designer, or by an embroiderer, in blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, or by a weaver, by any sort of workman or skilled designer."
Well, today I get the honor of introducing you to Chris Pauls, and I'm really glad to be able to get to do this. He has been a good friend for a long time, and I've seen him from the time that I first met him until now be a great example of what it means for the gospel to get a hold of somebody's life, to see the kind of growth and to see the way it affects everything in his life. And so he is a great husband to his wife, Amanda. He is a fantastic father to his 4 daughters. And if you knew Chris outside of the classroom or before he was a professor at MCC, you would see all the people that know him and love him in Salina. And so for those of you who have him as a professor, you really are blessed to be able to see him on a day-to-day basis and be affected by his faith, because the things that he talks about are real and honest and as transparent as you can imagine in such good ways. And so on a personal note, this stay-at-home order for all of us has been pretty personal for me too, because Chris and I, up until now, for the entire school year, we travel together back and forth between Manhattan and Salina every day. And so I'm definitely missing our road trip talks. But welcome Chris today as he shares with you in chapel.
Well, MCC family, let me just start off by saying thank you for inviting me to share with you today, and I miss you so badly. While I'm a little bummed that I can't see your faces and sing songs shoulder to shoulder with you, I am very thankful for the digital world we all get to engage with. And since we're able to harness the medium of video to communicate, today we're going to have a little bit of fun with some of the cool stuff that we can do, like jump cuts, text, and we'll see whatever else happens. Well, just in case we haven't met yet or become friends, my name is Chris Pauls and I teach Bible and Theology at MCC. I love it. I'm a huge dork, and I'm a former art teacher. As an undergrad, I studied sculpture, ceramics, and painting at Fort Hays State University. Go Tigers. Artistic expression has allowed me to make a living as a freelance designer, photographer, and visual communicator. It even allowed me the space to pastor in the local church while directing creative communication strategies. So I've called myself an artist, whatever that means, for a while now. That title has encompassed many different avenues of expression for me. Music, painting, sculpture, video. While I've been home over the last few weeks, I've been thinking about that word, art. What is it? What does it mean? What am I saying when I call myself an artist? Most dictionaries say something along the lines of expression or application of creative skill and imagination. Art is usually visual, producing works that are appreciated for their beauty or their emotional impact. In my search for a working definition, I think I've landed somewhere in the realm of art is the use of medium to tell story or to contribute in part to a greater conversation. So sometimes the art is in the beginning of the conversation. Other times, the art is in the joining of a newcomer to a long-standing tradition of conversation already started. It's a new voice in the sea of those who've gone before, adding something new in order to change the trajectory of the path. Or maybe the art is in the actual ability to accomplish a task in order for a conversation to take place about that task. Either way, for my working definition, conversation deserves a seat at the table. And conversations are two-sided. There's the someone saying something, and there's a response, a back and forth. It's kind of like this. How's it going, man? Can't complain. See, that back and forth, the call and response played out over time, it becomes a conversation. Right, some conversations are good, some not so good, some end abruptly. And the greatest ones take place over a long time, morphing, changing, forming, and being formed by the participants. Thanks, man. No problem. In the beginning, God makes things. He sees that they're good. This is a visual, right? So is God an artist? I mean, he makes stuff. In fact, he makes all the stuff. The story tells us that God took what was empty and void, tohu vavohu, and he made it work. He took the raw potential of his own creation and he gave it purpose. So is God an artist? Is he the source? Is it probably just a waste of our time to try and lock God into words that are based on human constructs? But he made those too. Check it out in the beginning pages of our Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault, separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day. For whatever reason, it is easy for us to see formless and empty and think this equals bad. Things without purpose just don't make sense to us. It's why we ask, what's the point? A lot. Imagine the scene, if you can, this way for a moment. God's Spirit, his ruach, hovering over potential, kind of like the top of a roller coaster where the car just sits and it teeters for that little second before it plummets down the first hill. He takes the resources that he supplies for himself and manipulates them into something that they hadn't been yet. Here's where I like to imagine a lump of clay right before I'd smack it down on a potter's wheel to make it into something useful. And the story tells us that he did all of this by saying something, speaking. It goes on and on like this in the text for the rest of the chapter. God speaking into existence, form and order taking shape where there was once shapelessness and emptiness. God speaks into being light, time, space, vegetation, animals, all the stuff that we see around us, the stuff we taste, that we hear, that we touch. It all started as speaking. The beginning of any great conversation starts with someone speaking. Enter humans into the story, the final brushstroke, the last stanza of the creation project. God creates representative versions of himself, new partners in the conversation. Here's what it says in Genesis 1:26 through 28. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." God's big project, right in the beginning of the story, is this lush garden brimming with life. And he makes these representatives of himself called humans, whose job is to replicate themselves into even more image-bearing representatives while they take care of this project. See, they're to respond to the conversation of creation. They're invited to join in. Well, the next chapter of the story gives us a little bit of a different perspective. Genesis chapter 2 begins with an end. On the seventh day, God rests. The creative creator also knows when to stop. Not necessarily to be finished, but to settle into what has been created, to allow the creation to be useful and to fulfill its purpose. The great artists that I studied in college followed this same model for stopping, and thank God for that, because without stopping and stepping back to see that the work was ready to be what it was supposed to be, we would have no David, no water lilies, no Sunday afternoon on the island of Le Grand Jacques. We would have a pile of rubble and big gray masses of swirled paint. Maybe the art is in the stopping. Maybe the art is in the constant cycle of doing, resting, doing, and resting. See, in chapter 2, the human is placed in the garden to work it and to keep it. The human is to participate in the project through action by doing stuff. The conversation has become more than words at this point. The human, Adam, works the ground, the Adama. I can't help but think the writer of this book wanted us to see that connection between the human and the dirt in a way that says, this is your place, better than our English words can put it. And while we're nerding out a little bit about words here, something really cool about the word translated work here is that it shows up all over the Old Testament. In Exodus and Deuteronomy, the word shows up most often as worship. In other places, it's translated as serving and toiling, tilling, or farming. The point is, the human does what the human was made to do. Participate in what is good by doing. By harnessing the resources that God has provided, by contributing to the project, not as the source of the conversation, but as the responder. The human is called to do something that points to what is good, to attribute worth to the one who started the conversation, to worship. Now we know the rest of the story. The humans mess up the conversation, as we all have, by misunderstanding their place, by participating in ways that do not point to what is good. The risk of God's project is that he invited other parties to participate. And the beauty of God's project is in the inherent risk in allowing others to play a role. So as an artist, for the most part, I want total control over the outcome of my work. Not always, but most of the time, it's my idea, my execution. But the creation story is one of collaboration. God creates, then invites his creation to create as well. Our participation, our worship, it honors the one who is sovereign over us, and in his sovereignty, God releases some of that creative control. The human's first roles are naming, organizing, and making more. Their dominion responsibility is tied to their management of creation, and there are privileges of enjoying the fruits of the partnership. They're able to eat of the fruit in the garden, and they're able to keep it and cultivate it. This is what the creation story tells us is what it looks like to be fully human, to walk in partnership with our Creator. At the heart of following Jesus, being a Christian is learning to become fully human again. We do this by recognizing our role and our place in the ebb and flow of the things that are right. We practice the art of doing right in right relationship. And all of our talk about creation, I think sometimes we forget that we are the creation. When we lose our practice of what is good, we begin to fall out of the rhythm of work and rest. And we, these created human representatives, ultimately find our way back to the conversation through the life and person of Jesus, the creative creator in the flesh of his own creation. The ultimate conversation starter calls us back into a life of participation. See, this is incarnation. God in human form, doing the work, participating with the participators, showing us how it's done, making things. Isn't it amazing that outside of bringing salvation for all humans, Jesus' other job was construction? See, we know this story. I want to point out something beautiful about this initial conversation we see in Genesis 1 and 2. It's an ongoing conversation of love.
a story played out in which you and I are blessed to play a part. It's a conversation about love and the risk of starting the conversation in the first place. A former drawing professor and one of my most formative teachers in life liked to say, drawing is just simply a series of making marks and correcting mistakes. The hardest part of it all is making the first mark. So as we look at this story of creation, we see God making the first mark, an invitation to a partnership of love and participation. Now, love is risky. Love is a two-way participatory street. It's a conversation that asks us to participate in a way that points to what is good, not to ignore the sadness, the pain, or the suffering that also comes with the territory of risky love, especially when it doesn't go the way it should, but to see that there's goodness and opportunity woven throughout. So as we find ourselves in strange times, wondering about circumstances, learning to lament, learning to pray, learning to trust, learning to find community within the walls of our own homes, let's not forget that we were made to participate in a good conversation. We're called to worship, to work, to do things, to be in the presence of our Creator, the one whose creative and active image we bear as we engage in and take care of this creation. I don't want to diminish that there's real suffering going on around us, and there are many who are sacrificing to love their neighbors in ways that deserve much applause. I do, however, want us to take this moment as we engage together over this digital medium, yet another medium in our arsenal of conversation starters, and call us to do something. So one of my favorite author, pastor, poet theologians, Eugene Peterson, says, time is the medium in which we do all of our living. When time is desecrated, life is desecrated. The two major desecrations of time are hurry and procrastination, he says. Hurry is a way for us to turn away from the gift of time by grasping compulsively for possession and control. We get consumed by busyness when we hurry. Procrastination is a distraction from the gift of time in lazy inattentiveness to the life of obedience. We don't value the moment when we procrastinate. Both of these are failures on our part to notice what God is doing. Now let's worship in this time and space. In the middle of the circumstances that don't make sense to us yet, let's be instruments of worship. Now, I know you know this, but it bears repeating. I'm not just talking about singing songs and pretending to be happy about everything. Don't get me wrong. I like being happy and I love music. I think it's one of the most amazing tools we've been given as a worshiping community to engage in emotion and thought and expression all at the same time. I'm talking about the many other avenues of doing that we don't always associate with our worship. So I'm guessing if you're like me, you've developed or practiced or studied up a little on a new hobby, or maybe you've dusted off an old one so you don't end up talking to yourself. Maybe there's a conversation out there that you've been dying to try to be a part of through your practice. What greater opportunity than now to cultivate something that spreads some joy, asks a question, gets a laugh, or just starts a conversation? Let's take this strange blessing of time that we've been given, if you're able, to be a non-anxious presence in the central nervous system of human activity, to bear the image of a creative creator in his creation as his creation. So we're going to sing another song together here in a few moments, whose lyrics just paint this picture beautifully. And when we're done, I'll be back with a bit of a challenge and some practical application for how we can engage together in active participation as we bear the image of God in our practice.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the one 100 billion failures disappear. We lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you so alive, I can see your heart and everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. If you gladly chose surrender so alive, I can see your heart 8 billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them so alive, like you would again 100 billion times, no measure could amount to your desire. You're the one who never leaves the one behind.
Like I was saying before, we were made to participate in a conversation with the most creative creator through our service, our submission, our work, our efforts, our activities, all of our lives. So I'm issuing a challenge to you, MCC, and anyone you want to invite into this as well. Many of us have a unique opportunity sitting in front of us called time. I know for some of you the schedule got crazier, but for a lot of us it slowed way down. Over the next week or more, if you find yourself at home or with some extra time on your hands, let's try something new. Or get back into a practice of something that helps to spark a conversation about worship in this time and space. See, worship can look like a lot of different things, and sometimes a spark of creativity is exactly what we need to reignite the conversation with God and His people. So I want to challenge you to step out and do something. The world of information is at your fingertips and waiting for you to jump in and harness the resources God has given us to do things that point to Him. I'm currently taking in some of my free time to master the art of homemade pasta making, and currently I am terrible at it. But it has brought some laughter, joy, and fascination into our home. My wife is learning how to bake every type of bread there is under the sun. It is carb frenzy at our house, but is also worship as we engage in the good things God has provided for us, and we attribute that work back to Him. Many of you have posted songs, the instruments that you're learning how to play. I've seen drawings and other great pieces of visual art. Some of my students mentioned learning a new language during this time on our weekly discussion boards. Many times we're hesitant to share parts of our lives that are in the learning process, but what I find so interesting about the creation story is that God doesn't wait for the humans to understand it all before He starts a conversation. He brings them in and He makes them part of the project with a beginner's role to play. So I want to see what you're up to and how your life during this time is bearing the image of God. It's inspiring to me, and I know it's encouraging to those around us. We've had a lot of heavy over the last few weeks, and rightly so, but maybe it's time we share a little bit of levity as well. It is still imperative that we understand worship is not novelty. It is our dedicated adoration to the one who is worthy of our worship. Our worship should tell the story of Jesus. Now, this story comes in many forms, fashions, and expressions because the story of Jesus is lived out and continued in His body, the church. As we face this small window of time in which our methods of church have changed, let's use the time and these moments of practice to remind ourselves that our methods were never the mission. So, over the next week or so, take a few pictures and capture some videos and share them on your favorite social media platforms, your walls, your feeds, and your stories with the hashtag #WorshipLooksLike. And let's contribute a little bit more into the conversation of worship as image bearers. So as we close out today, I want to just take a moment and read to you this prayer from the collection of Catholic creatives. It goes like this. Creator of the universe, how infinite and astonishing are your worlds. O divine imagination, you created a creator when you imagined me into existence. Breathe breath into so much dust. Let me lament for forgetting daily to rise up out of the clay. Free me from the deceit of the mundane and from the lure of comfort, which dulls all of my given edges. Most of all, light of my life, forgive my blindness. Open all my eyes. Salt me with newness and with dreams. Fire my soul with your inventive flame. Let me be committed to the world, and by it, find in it the deepest joy. Universal creativity, flow through me. Faith to see things not yet seen, hope to overflow broken cisterns, and love to free me forever. Flow, O river, from the holy temple. Through my mind, to my hand, infuse my work with spirit to feed hungry souls. I love you all. I'm praying for you this week, and I'll see you online.